There she
Hi,
is.
Amy. How are you?
Hello. Hey, Charles. How are
Uh,
you?
I'm better now. Better that I get a chance to talk with you.
That's nice of you to say.
I've been thinking about your movie, The Menu, for so long because I made sure to watch it. It was touch and go for a while. I made sure to watch it at TIFF when it
Amazing.
world premiered with
Yeah.
an audience
Oh,
who
yeah.
who were really respond. It was so buzzy too. It was on everybody's lips at the festival. Everyone I was
Yeah.
talking to, and
It was
I'm
really
trying to
cool. Yeah.
keep like it like really professional demeanor, like maybe, and then like the film festival, like the person in me was like, I really want to see this movie.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. That was what's so cool about it, getting to see it with an audience, because I think to date that might have been the largest audience I've seen it in, and also it felt like the energy was just like perfect. Um And I had a few friends that had movies at the festival or were just there for work. And everybody was like, could you get me a ticket to the menu? Could you get me a ticket to the menu? I was like, I barely have a ticket to the menu. Like,
Yeah,
they gave me like two tickets. So
yeah.
my husband came and me. Um, but it was really fun. And I'd never been to Toronto. So that was a treat. I think one of the reasons it had so much buzz at TIFF was because it had been on the blacklist in
Yeah.
2019. Script had, and so a lot of people had read that earlier version of the script and they knew it was good. So the script had been going around, and when I auditioned for it in the oh god, it must have been like the spring of my initial audition, maybe early summer of 2021. I'd already heard about it. I hadn't read it, but I'd heard people talking about it, and I so I was very excited to be able to audition for it. And I also didn't think that I had a chance in hell of getting the part, because I just knew so many people, because it had kind of a little bit of a reputation around town. Everybody was auditioning for it. So, I put an audition on tape and I hoped for the best, but I just didn't, I never thought I would get the job. So it was really cool when I did. I did a chemistry read with John Leguizamo over Zoom, and that was really helpful for me, because I think in getting the part, because I'm such a big fan of his. I know his work. I've seen all of his one-man shows and his movies, and just as a fan from a long time ago. And so when I got to meet him over Zoom and we had like a little conversation, we did the scenes together, I just felt like I knew him. So from my part, I was bringing in all of this history, which I don't know him at all. I do, but at the time I didn't know him at all as a person. But you kind of feel like you do when you're somebody's fan. And so that was really helpful. And then just getting to do the movie was just like one amazing thing after another, like getting to work with Mark Mylod, the director, and getting to work with Ralph Fiennes and Anya Taylor-Joy, Judith Light, Nicholas Hoult. I mean, I've been fans of these people for years. So it was just like a never ending present. It just kept, you know what I mean? I kept unwrapping it and there was more present underneath.
Two of the things I want to single out from it: the location, first of all, outside Savannah, Georgia, but not quite outside this incredible island. I've read about how they were going to first shoot it in Scotland. And I think the
Yeah.
fact that it was actually in the US in such an incredible location
Yeah.
just really helped with the film as well too. And the
Yeah.
visuals, the cinematography, boy, does it look incredible.
It just looks incredible. Peter Deming's our cinematographer, and he did something that I felt like, also, I'm not a cinematographer, but I felt was going to be a real challenge, which is to make one room, right? I mean, obviously we've got these beautiful shots of us getting up to the island and all that's beautiful, but that's like not even a quarter of the movie. And then we're in one room, and I just thought to myself, like, how are you going to make this look compelling? Like, if you're watching the movie on mute, you know what I mean? Like, is it going to look like the same old shot every time? And of course, no, because his work is excellent. And also Ethan Tobin, who's our production designer, made it look like, I mean, it was just so incredible, because I walked in and it looked like a very fancy restaurant. And like, some of the themes of the movie are like, what happens when we lose touch with our humanity, right? What happens to our art when it's stripped of you know love and the human touch, right? So there were a lot of things that felt like very nature based, like there were like wooden paneling, but then there was like so much stainless steel, and you know what I mean, things that are like in nature but then balanced with things that are man-made. And he just told the story in a way through the production design that, I mean, you know, you just look at it and you're like, yeah, that's why you have this job. You're just so excellent at it.
Gotta ask you about Rafe. You've got the picture with Rafe. I'm so skeptical beforehand when I don't know what the movie's about. I'm thinking,
Yeah.
okay, Rafe Fiennes, he could easily, he could just like play the hits, right?
Yeah.
Like
He
he
could do
could do,
anything.
yeah.
Yeah.
But then when I'm watching him in the movie, I'm like, is this guy like for real? Like another level
Yeah.
even. And what
Yeah.
he does with it, again, balancing that sense of tone where it works. So he hit all the notes with it too. What's it like to work with?
A master class. I mean, and that's true of everybody that worked in this movie. I think, I don't know if Mark did this like intentionally, but you know, he hired a lot of actors that came from theater, you know. So like, I know what it's like to be on stage. I know what it's like to, you know, always be on, you know, and you need those skills in order to do a movie like this, because he shot it in such a way where sometimes you're in the background and you don't even know it. So you better be on, you know.
Yeah.
And what struck me, and I knew already that Rafe was a, you know, a masterful actor, like that he's proven time and again, but like to see, it's like to see how the sausage is made, you know, in a way, it's really cool. And it feels like such a privilege to like get to see him work. And, you know, he's very much, like the kind of actor that will stay for your coverage. I worked on a lot of show, not a lot that this has happened at, but I've worked on a few things that maybe the person that you're working with is a big movie star or whatever, and they're just not going to stick around for your coverage, which is when the camera's on you and not on them. You know, they'll send like a body double in or a stunt person or whatever to do your lines with you, which is such a bummer because you're not acting with the person that you have been hired to act with. So, but he was there for everybody's coverage. I mean, Academy Award nominee, like being an extra in my coverage is like insane, you know. But really set the bar so high. We didn't have a lot of time to shoot this movie. I think we shot it in 37 days or something. So, you know, in order to save time, we would sometimes rehearse the next day's work the night before, and he would just be off book already. You know, he knew this character so well. He was so brilliant with like, you know, weaving the all the colors, like you said, through this like blanket, you know, this performance. And I think the thing too that was really, that I don't think, I mean, I think most people know that he's British, but like I think the accent work in this movie is so amazing. Like Anya,
Yeah.
British, and Nick is British, he's British, and Janet, and they all have these incredible American accents. So it's hard to do that. It's hard to balance, like, you know, the character work, then also he's got bricks of dialogue, and then on top of that have to do accent work, and do it all day for everybody's coverage is a lot. And
No,
he's just
it was believable. You know,
yeah,
sometimes it takes you out of the moment. You're like, well, there, and everybody was just,
yeah.
yeah. I bought it. I bought what they were selling.
We bought it too. I bought it when I was watching it. I buy it now. Yeah, it was like everybody on this cast was just so cool. And like, you know, this was not a huge budget movie. They didn't have a lot of money to make it with. So people were there because they loved it. And that's makes a huge difference, you know.
So you got to tell me then, what were some of the favorite moments? Maybe the private screening with the audience. You can allude if you want, but the movie is out now, so we're free to talk about it.
We're free to talk about it. Well, I'll tell you something. I don't think I've said this in an interview before, but there was these two deleted scenes that I totally understand why they were no longer in the movie, but man, was it fucking fun to shoot them. So there's this one piece where Janet's character is like waterboarded with the broken emulsion. You know, keep bringing her the emulsion. Finally, then Ted, her editor, played by Paul Adelstein, has to like waterboard her with it. That was just incredible to get to watch. And then there's this other scene. It was in the same sequence where my character Felicity force feeds the movie star peanuts, and he's allergic to them. And so it's like this whole thing where at first she's horrified that she's got to do this because she knows it's going to kill him or get, you know, make him really ill. But then she starts enjoying it, which was super fun to play. But ultimately, and I understand why it didn't make the cut, because I think that so much of this movie is taking a turn where you don't expect it. And I think that, you know, poisoning them with the food or harming them using the food is like the easy choice.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They didn't want, and I really respect that, because, you know, they could have gone the easy route, and instead they were like, no, we don't want the food to be the thing that is harmful to the patrons. And also, you know, back to the tone, you know, we were filming the s'mores scene. That was really fun.
The s'mores scene
Yeah,
is
I don't
so
actually
good.
know. I don't know if I said this already to you, but we shot it in sequence. A lot of the movie we shot in order. Did I already say that? I
You
might
hadn't
have.
said it to me, but I hadn't heard you say that
Oh, great.
before,
So
which
we
must
shot it
make it even cooler to
even
experience.
cooler, because you're kind of like the momentum. It's like doing a play, right? Where the momentum every night gets you to where you need to go, instead of having to like, okay, where am I in time and place? Like, where, you know, having to drum up the feelings. You're just doing it, right? So by the time we hit the s'mores, I think it was a little bit like, we were just also had been in that studio and on the stages for like 30 days. So we just, and we knew we had like a couple of things to do outside in the remaining days. So I think a lot of us were just dying to get the fuck out of there too, and see something different and shoot something different. So there was that. And there's also like, you know, so in the characters at the end, they sort of accept their fate. Not only do they accept it, they pay for it. You know what I mean? They like give their credit card down and pay for this experience, which will ultimately kill them. And so I felt like that was real. Like the relief that you saw, I think, on everybody's faces for to just be done with this very gruesome part of the movie was like real. And but yeah, going back to the tone, when those marshmallow things came out, I was like, ooh, this could be bad. Like this could either be amazing and really pay off. Sorry about my lighting. Let me just switch that over. This could either really pay off and be like incredible, or it could go the other way, which is like totally camp, totally crazy. But again, because Mark had such a specific vision for this movie and he knew what he was getting as far as like the performances, and he would sort of calibrate it as, you know, that sometimes some takes he'd be like, okay, let's do a loose take, let's do a really big take, okay, let's tone it down. So he had options. By the time we get to the s'mores, you know, I feel like it felt earned, you know, and it didn't, you know, obviously it's very silly, but not in a way that pulls you out of the movie, in a way that sort of flavors, for lack of a better, you know, term, flavors the entire movie.
Thought it was a nice ending, a happy ending, even in a way, in a
Right.
really strange way. I want to reflect on it as an audience member through you. You spend much of the movie, even though your name is Felicity, looking very annoyed or unhappy. Got kind of a bit of a friend, as do most of the guests. Nobody's really happy to be there. They're not impressed by it by any means.
Yeah, right.
Save for one or two. But then I just remember watching, this could be a memory of mine. This could be just me thinking back. But I remember you had such, the edit that they chose, that you had such a look at the end of the movie, which was like very different than you looked throughout, where you just had a look of like horror when you were like getting onto the s'mores,
Right,
but also like really kind of like horror, but also like relief maybe, or like happiness in a way.
Yeah, I think that's the tallest order of this movie, even when I read it, has always been like, how are we going to get from these people that are just, you know, so unimpressed, like you said, so not buying what they're giving, you know what I mean? They're just kind of like aloof and whatever. How do you go from that to accepting their fate and kind of like wanting it and paying for it? Like, how do you do that? And you know, I don't know how it's achieved in the movie. It is achieved, but I don't know exactly like what Mark decided to do to like make that happen. But I think it's genius. It's really cool. And that's the challenge of the movie before it was made. And I think now people still have like, you know, I was like, sometimes I'll look through Twitter, like I'll look at the menu or like a Twitter or whatever. And this one, like I screenshot it because I thought it was so funny. This one person wrote, anyone else see the menu? Let's talk about it. The way they all willingly sat there for the bullshit, please. Which I thought is just so hilarious, right? Because they do. And Rafe's character even says, like, why didn't you try harder to fight back? You probably could have. You know what I mean? But there's like, I don't really know what the answer is. I don't know if it's because there is sort of like the fight has been driven out of these people even before they got there. You know, these are all like people at the highest levels, the highest echelons. They're wealthy, they've got influence. Like, when was the last time they really fought for something? I don't know. So so yeah, it's just, I guess, like, you know, sort of eroding their fight, and they have so little fight to begin with that at the end it's just kind of like, okay, take me.
It's earned, very much earned. And I'm reading through reviews of it myself, having seen it, and people have very easy, I think, takes on the movie, where they're like, oh, well, it's about the rich and let's eat the rich, and which, you know, it is too, but there's so much going on in terms of people in any service industry. That's who I kept hearing from. Anyone who'd even worked in a restaurant or any service industry was really into the movie. It even has a commentary on COVID. Like, what other movie does that? You know, in a way that worked.
Yeah, and we shot that line, and they were like, well, it probably won't make the cut, and it did, because I thought it was fitting, and it kind of comes out of nowhere because you've like totally forgotten about COVID by the time you're like at this part of the movie. You're just like, what? So
most stuff pretended it doesn't exist, and it actually worked as a plot point, and it was like, well, okay.
And it's tough to pull that off. But I think it pulled it off. I think this movie, like any, you know, I don't want to sound like too like grandiose about it, but I think anything that resonates with audiences, anything that we would sort of categorize as good, relevant art, right, is always going to like hold up a mirror to our social values, our anxieties, what we're thinking about, what's in the zeitgeist. And I think that these writers, Will Tracy and Seth Reese, like they worked at The Onion together. Will works, he writes on Succession. Seth writes on Seth Meyers. Like, they've got their finger on the pulse of the stuff that we are thinking about. And I think that, yeah, there's a commentary that we've been seeing a lot of this like theme in recent years, like eat the rich. Of course, it's in there, but I think a more compelling sort of thing that it touches on is sort of an indictment on consumption, like how we consume, how much we consume. Are we even stopping to consider how this, in this case, meal came to be, you know? And it also takes something, what I think is so brilliant about this movie is that it takes a basic human necessity, which is food, and it commodifies it, right? It makes it into a status symbol, but it's something we all need. We all need to eat. But in this movie, only the wealthiest people, only the people with the most influence, can eat there and can have the food. And I think that that's pretty accurate. Like, we do that. We've been doing that a lot, you know, even with water. As climate change continues, water is going to be a very limited commodity that people are going to be fighting for. So I don't know. I mean, we can go on and on about like the themes of the movie, but that's something that I really enjoyed out of it. Also the idea of complicity, in regards to Felicity, because you're like, oh, why is she there? Why does she get to die? But like, you know, sometimes the complicit are just as bad as the doers.
It seems like the stuff in which you're starring is interesting, thought-provoking, challenging. So what do you think it was personally that has compelled you to find these really interesting projects?
Well, thank you for that question. You know, I think I said this before we started recording, like, or maybe no, I said this to someone earlier because I went to work, a voiceover thing, and they were like, wow, this is so great, it's all happening. I'm like, yeah, it only took 13 years, you know, and like I've been in Los Angeles 13 years, and it's been a struggle. I've always wanted to be in great material. I've always wanted to be cast in great movies and TV and theater. But it's been a struggle for me. It hasn't, you know, it's not a struggle for everybody. I think that, you know, when I moved here, I looked really young. I was playing high school into my late 20s. And, you know, and this was before the time of Euphoria. So like, if you're playing high school, you're probably not, you don't have a super complicated character. And so I kind of like, but every now and then I'd book like The Americans, which is like a really cool show. And, you know, I'd do an off-Broadway play. And so I've always craved this level of work. It's just taken me a really long time to sort of get the opportunities. You know, I've had many wonderful jobs. You know, when I was on a freeform show called Young and Hungry. You know, when I left that show, or when the show was over, I found it really hard to get people to take me seriously, because they're like, oh, well, you were in a sitcom or multicam, you know, we're not going to see you for that or whatever. So it's taken a long time, and I appreciate you noticing, I guess. And I'm hoping that it continues. It's something that I want. You know, I this is the kind of work or kind of movies and TV and theater that I like to watch. So for me to be able to be in it means the world to me. And I hope to continue that.
I have to ask you about Spirited and working with Ryan Reynolds with the wig going on. That was so funny too. You were like the one that got away. I was
The one
rooting for you, but
Oh, thank
he
you.
wasn't bringing it. So I get it.
No, he wasn't bringing it. That was super fun. That was another movie where I auditioned. I was like, I'm never gonna get this. What, to play Ryan Reynolds' girl who got away? Never. So I was shocked that I got the job. And I was bummed that my character didn't sing because I was so excited to be in
Yeah,
it.
I want to get him a song too.
I know, but more, I guess more for later, I guess. But it was really cool, and he's lovely, and Will is just like just an angel. Like they're both just wonderful people. And I got to work with them briefly, but it was memorable. And they were all, one of the times we were filming it in a mall, and they'd rented out the bottom half of the mall but not the top half, so there was like all these people just kind of like watching the scenes being filmed. And they were so generous to, I don't know, I just don't expect people to go out of their way, especially when they're that busy, they have that much going on. Like they were acting, they were singing, they were dancing, to take the time to acknowledge and be like, hey, I know I'm famous, and I know you're excited to see me, so let me just throw you a little wave or whatever. I thought that was really cool. And they were also in a situation that I would have just crumbled under, which is when you do a musical, you have to sing. You pre-record the songs, but when you're filming it, you still should sing live so that it looks like you're singing, so you can get like the veins popping and stuff. So these poor dudes, like, they were singing full out and only they could hear the music because they had like an inner ear. So they were singing a cappella to like not just the whole crew, but like all of these people that were watching that day. And that's just an impossible, I would just crumble. So I'm just so impressed by them, and they're just wonderful on screen and off.
I had a question for you based on, we've talked about your career path a little bit. And in that vein, a little bit, I've noticed you did a lot of voiceover work. Was that something where, you wanted to maybe work a different skill? Was it by design? Is that maybe what you were getting offered at the time or was leading towards? What was that like?
It was a total coincidence. I mean, total accident. I'd actually, when I first moved to LA, I was with an agency and they had a voiceover department, and they would send me out for voiceovers, and I just never booked anything. I would go out or, do my records and just never had any luck. I remember this agent, my first voiceover agent, her name's Maureen Rose. She said to me, it's really hard to get in. It is the most exclusive club of people that get to do voiceover. But then once you're in, then people know you and they start hiring you again, because a lot of the voiceover actors, especially like in the 90s, early 2000s, you could have one person, they could do 25 voices. And now it's, they're wanting to hire people who maybe can't do as many voices, but are more authentically the character, I guess. So when Elena of Avalor came along, I was like, man, I've been auditioning for voiceovers forever. I'm never going to get this. By this time I was at a different agency, Innovative, and the voiceover agent called me, Zach Kaplan, and was like, I think you should really go out for this. Like, I don't know, like, because Disney won't say, but I'm thinking it's going to be like a big deal for them. I'm thinking she's going to be a princess. And I was like, oh my God, like the first Latina princess for Disney. So I did it, and I was just lucky. Like after not booking anything for years and years in the voiceover realm, I was ready to give up. And then I got, this huge show. And then after that, I was offered, no, I auditioned for it, but for She-Ra, which is on Netflix. And that was a total joy to work on too. So that was like a detour in my career that I never thought would happen. But honestly, during those years, I was auditioning a lot and, trying to stay away from the stuff I had been doing up to that point, trying to make a pivot, trying to make a shift into more like sort of, I don't know, I guess more artsy kind of projects. But that was what was coming my way, and so when I got these two voiceover jobs, it was like a breath of fresh air, because I was playing, I wasn't, what's it called? Like didn't wasn't trapped in my body, if that makes sense. Like I could play Shira, who's like a 9 foot tall blonde woman. Like you know what I mean? It didn't matter what I looked like. I could just do it. And I got hired off the basis of my talent. So that felt really, really nice at the time. And I have some of the best memories. Some of the best friends I've made over the years have been through voiceover.
Nice. Big Finish question through the menu. You get one food stuff for the rest of your life, or one final blowout meal, or whatever it is. Maybe not even a meal, maybe just one thing. What's it going to be?
Okay. It's going to be white truffle pasta.
Oh, man.
And that's going to be expensive for the jail or wherever. If I'm on death row, that's going to cost them a pretty penny, but that's what I would want as my last meal. Just like noodle, like pasta with very simply, like with like butter or whatever. And then just maybe a little bit of like Parmesan, but like just like a kiss of it. And then just like a ton of white truffle on top.
Are you going to eat it, or are you going to wear it?
I'm going to shove it in my mouth as fast as possible. I'm very big on like, listen, if you're full, don't stop. You know what I mean? Like you don't have to, no pressure. But when there's truffle, I'm going to lick that bowl. Like there is no truffle that is going to be left behind. Even if it's just a shard of truffle, I'm eating it whole. So yeah, that's going to be like $150 last meal.
Yeah, nice. This was even cooler than I could have imagined.
Well, I just think you're the best, Charles. And thank you for doing all the research and watching all that stuff. That really means the world to me. Not everybody does that. So it's really nice to talk to someone who has a basis. And so I appreciate your time and your questions.
Yeah.